last time.
definitely
And I took
be an expert.
Yeah.
just because it had been so long
I
since I've
took,
been in school.
Okay.
All right, let's get back into it. So, autonomy and parenting. Working class parents raise their children differently from the more white collar jobs. Blue collar is working class, right? White collar jobs. The attitude that you expect your children to have is different depending on your socioeconomic status. So compared to middle class and upper class parents, working class parents tend to stress obedience and respect for authority. So you need to do what you're told. You need to cooperate. You need to get along with these people because, of course, you have a higher chance of getting in trouble with them if you are from a lower stratum of society. Whereas the middle class and upper class parents usually stress more of fighting back against authority, rebelling against authority, because generally they have a better chance of getting away with it. So for instance, if your teacher gives you a bad grade and you don't think it's fair, and you go to your parent, if you are from a middle or upper class family, then they will probably tell you, then you need to go talk to that teacher and demand to know why you got a bad grade and what you could do to get a better grade. If you come from a poor family, your parents are likely to say, well, if that's what your teacher thinks you deserve, then that's what you deserve. Your teacher is the one who gives you the grade. So it's a different attitude that gets passed down depending on the economic situation. And of course it makes sense because the poorer you are, the more likely you are to come into contact with the police or with other authority figures who can really do things to harm you. The more money you have, the more protection you have against authority in general. So it's safer for your children to rebel against authority. So there's a financial stress, resource investments, meaning that you put a lot of time into your kids, so you don't want your kids to get caught by the cops or something like that. I mean, that is a valid fear for people coming from poorer communities, that my kids are going to get hurt by the police. And there's some truth to that. I mean, it does happen. It doesn't happen, I think, as often as the media makes it seem like it happens, but it does happen, and it's a real thing. There was a student over in biology, and he was talking to my mom about him and his brother had an interaction with the police, and they're black, and so he was very, leery of the police, and they were talking to his brother, and he said, I don't know what they were talking to him about, so I come running over and like, what are you talking to him about? What's going on here? And I look at him like, did they pull their guns on you? Because this is like a 400-pound black guy who's 6.5 feet tall, and you're telling me you came barreling at the police, angry and shouting at them? Like, you're lucky you didn't get shot. And he's like, they did pull their guns. How did you know that? Really? Like, how do you not know? Like, that's not how you interact with the police. But he has such a bad relationship. He's been taught so many bad things, which the police are not very good with their PR, so I understand why he's been taught these things. But it's sort of like you're creating more problems for yourself because of this attitude.
But
So
it's interesting that you just said, I think you said 400 pounds?
yeah, I mean, he's a big guy.
And then
By the way, he's gone on a ketogenic diet, and he's like half that weight now.
Wow.
But so
Wow.
less issues
How
with the
long?
police next time.
Anyway, you
I think it's been 2 years.
400-pound black guy. So
Yes,
it
because
does,
that is important.
there is
Yes.
a perception.
Yes,
If
absolutely.
it's a 400-pound white guy,
Then it's
maybe
slightly less
it's,
dangerous.
sir, it's okay, we're
Yes.
handling things. But if it's a black
Yes.
guy, it's like,
Yes.
and that's interesting.
It's very interesting,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's true. And I did say that on purpose, knowing that race is an issue. I mean, I've grown up in the police world, okay, so I get to see the behind the scenes things, God bless you.
Thank you.
And most of the time, with the cops I know, they say if somebody's going to pull a gun or a knife on me, then it's probably going to be a black person. So of course, every time I see a black person, the first thing I assume is that they're going to be carrying a weapon, and this may be a fight for my life. I've had somebody say this to me. Any interaction with a black person, I automatically assume that my life is in danger.
That is so interesting.
Mhm.
And I gotta tell you, my dad, as an LAPD officer,
Oh, okay.
had a talk with my brother
Mhm.
and said, you're gonna be stopped numerous times
Yes.
now that you have your license. You're
Mhm.
gonna be stopped for DWB, driving while black. And this is what you need to do.
Mhm.
And he gave him directions on
Yeah.
how to handle himself
Yes.
as a young black man
Mhm.
keep your hands on the steering wheel,
Yep.
and tell them what
10
you're
and
doing.
12,
Reaching for
or
what,
10 and
you know.
2, whatever, 10 and 2, yep.
So, and
Yeah.
that's a sad thing, because, you know, there are lots of bad people in the world, black, white, Chinese, whatever.
Mhm.
There are lots of bad people in the world.
Yeah.
You know, that you might have interactions with, but then you don't categorize the whole, you know.
Right.
Race.
But it's hard when, like for instance, my dad works for San Bernardino. So here it's a predominantly black area, black and Mexican for the most part. And if you have problems with somebody, then it's probably going to be a black or a Mexican. Because number one, they're the ones that live there. And number two, it's San Bernardino. So if you live in San Bernardino, you're probably almost automatically a troublemaker. Either that or you're a kid. And you still may be dangerous as a child.
And it doesn't help that they feed into their own stereotypes anyways.
Right, and then it becomes self-perpetuating, absolutely. And so then you have a survival situation. It's just like when a soldier has PTSD and has a panic attack in a mall. Are people in the mall going to be strapped with a bomb and blow them up or kill them? No, but they've been trained in this one situation, a crowd means danger. And so now anytime I'm in a crowd, my mind goes, this is dangerous. So it's the same thing with the cops. Because they've dealt with so many criminals of a certain race. I mean, the majority of crimes in our country are, you know, more likely to be, well, not the majority of crimes, but the majority of violent crimes are more likely to be minority crimes. That's white people are more likely to
Become
embezzle.
White collar crimes.
Or white collar crimes, yeah. So now that it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. My brain has been programmed when I see a minority to think danger. And so now I get into a situation, like with the student from the biology department, his brother is a nice guy. He'd never do anything wrong. And it wasn't even that bad of a situation. It was, I think they were just questioning him because a crime had gone on in the neighborhood. And they were just asking him if he'd seen anything. But now you have this one guy who's been programmed to think cops are dangerous, and cops to be programmed to think black people are dangerous, and now you have a volatile situation. So, I mean,
And I don't
you're
think
lucky
that
you
it's
didn't get shot.
feeding into it. I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that
Yes.
people are,
I
you
know,
know,
but-
like, I guess I am this kind of a
Yes,
person, and that's
absolutely.
what it's expected, and that's what I'm giving.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
absolutely.
that's why I say, like, because especially from living in San Bernardino, like,
Yeah, 'cause
for
you
a
grew
good
up there.
part of my life,
Mhm.
like, they don't try to think logically. They try to think, you know what, if they're going to view me this way, I'm just going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
why
I'll show
do
them how
that?
bad
I
it
think
can
some
be.
people just don't have a choice because that's the
Well, yeah, I
lifestyle
understand that.
that's the lifestyle they have because they're poor and
Yeah.
it's
They
a
were born
desperate
into it,
situation.
yeah.
Yeah, born like
Yeah, and it
because I was
becomes
born in
self-perpetuating.
poverty too. You know, I grew up with all the hardships that they did, but like, and when I told my friends who lived down there, you have the choice to make something of yourself. You don't have to follow what people want you to be.
Yeah.
But they're
Many
like,
of them just don't believe it.
yeah, they just don't believe what I'm saying. And, like,
Yeah, I
lived
knew
the
people
same
in San
situation.
Bernardino, they never left San Bernardino in their life. You
Yeah.
know, they're adults who've never seen anything outside the city of San Bernardino, which is just insane. But I mean, it's like, I think now it's 50% of the population of San Bernardino is on welfare.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's been a bad town since the Mormons founded it. The Mormons abandoned it because it was so bad. They said, this is a quote, "The gates of hell prevail in San Bernardino."
Oh my goodness.
That's what the Mormons said when they packed up and left. Yeah.
My son-in-law is a San Bernardino County Sheriff.
Oh, okay.
White, my daughter is white, my stepdaughter.
Yeah.
She said, since he's gotten this job, this was years ago, before they bought their first home, she said, since he's gotten this job, we were looking for houses, and we found a house that we really liked, and we were going to put an offer in on it. We drove by it, and then a black man drove up in a car, and he said, never mind, I don't want the house.
Wow.
And it was distressing for her, because I'm her mom.
Yeah.
She was like, so, but that's the attitude he has now. And I asked him, I said, so Chris, have you had to pull out your gun and shoot anyone? He goes, no, but I can't wait. And so
every
I'm
cop-
thinking,
Every cop wants to shoot somebody.
and I'm thinking, my dad never wanted to shoot anyone. He had the attitude, he said, thank God I've never had to.
But he's unusual then.
It was a different time.
Yeah, every cop I know says, I wake up every morning hoping I get to kill somebody.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
That's
And
terrible.
every cop I know. I've never met a
Yeah.
cop who disagreed with that statement. Yeah. So, interesting. I mean, there's a lot of problems. I know this is sort of getting off track, but it sort of has to do with it too, because, you know, the economic impact on families, and the cultural, socioeconomic level of families. But the police departments, they only require a high school degree. They don't require a good GPA. So I remember one of the sergeants when I was younger, he joked, he goes, I make six figures, I'm the head of, well, he wasn't the head of the department, he was a sergeant, so, high up in the department, and I only graduated with I think a 1.5 GPA.
Wow.
Yeah.
Reject.
Was he special?
No, that's pretty typical. They really don't care what your GPA is, and they're looking for narcissistic. Like you have to do a personality test, the MMPI, Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, and they're looking for narcissistic tendencies because really, and antisocial and narcissism.
Who else is going to do that job,
Who else is going to do
right?
that job? Yeah, exactly. And the big issue, LAPD really screwed up the police force for the world. LAPD back in the 70s, I think, brought in the Marine Corps to train them.
My dad was a Marine, so it's like they were looking
Yeah.
for that.
They were looking for that, yeah, exactly. So they wanted to go to a military type culture rather than the police used to be, it was some member of the community. It was the person you went to. Like I have older friends who said, if I was distressed, if I was upset, like let's say a kid at school was bullying me, I would go find a cop and talk to them about it. And he would come and he'd talk to the other person and try to work out a friendship or whatever. That the person you talked to in the community was a police officer. Could you imagine going to a cop now and saying, this kid hurt my feelings, could you help me with this? They would laugh in your face and then probably try to find something to arrest you for. I mean, it's a totally different mentality. And soldiers don't do well in mainstream society. I don't know why LAPD thought that was a good route to go.
They're trying to have them blind to, because
Yeah.
military is always, you have to follow
Obedience.
this. We want you this way.
Yeah, and you're isolated from the culture that you're in. And we see that when soldiers come back from war, Marines come back from war, where they have a hard time reintegrating back into society. So now we have these cops who are supposed to constantly be part of society, and yet they're trained to be isolated from society. And it's backfired tremendously.
One of the big problems that my husband had after he was discharged, he was living in Oklahoma, like one of the more rural areas like the school of, and the girl that he was with at the time, they had a lot of issues, so he dealt with the cops a lot, so he got to be good friends with some of them. But there was one that he would basically meet every morning. He only was 15 minutes away from work. He had to leave an hour early because he was stopped every day, and the cop even like tried to plant alcohol, like open containers and stuff to arrest him.
Do you know why?
He was Hispanic. My husband's Hispanic.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, the first thing they look at is the car. So if you're driving an old hoopty, then you're going to get pulled over no matter what race, but then they look for race next. Yeah.
he was really special because he had a sports car. So he would,
Oh, yeah, sports car, yeah.
the
You're
apartment
guaranteeing a
complex,
ticket with a
yeah.
sports car, too. Yeah.
The apartment complex he was in, because it would get really bad snow out there, he would have to drift into the parking lot and drift into his spot.
Oh, wow. He had to.
He had to.
The
Poor
sports
man.
car, so
Yeah.
he didn't have the
Right, yes.
the traction and everything, so he had.
Because of course he was not going to replace his tires with regular ones.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, that's the baby.
That's fine. But yeah, I mean, and cops are taught that. I mean, they go through, they're taught how to profile. That is part of being a cop. And it makes sense. I mean, you have to, we all do that to each other. Like, if you are walking down a dark alley and there's somebody coming towards you, I guarantee you're going to do all sorts of profiling. What's their race? What's their gender? What are they wearing? How are they walking? Are they in a nice suit and they look like they're a businessman or something?
It's painful to people, though.
It's painful to admit it, but we all do that to each other.
No, it's painful to the people, it's like the person
Sure.
it's being done to.
Yeah.
And I was profiled as a prostitute once. On my way back with my boyfriend from dinner, a cop pulled us over and said they saw him stop and pick me up. And I said, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I had to show my ID. I was in the dorms at Cal Poly at the time. I had to show my,
Well, on both sides.
He says,
I
I
actually
haven't
thought
seen you
were
working
looking
around
at
here
you.
before. My boyfriend was white. So then
Yeah,
they're,
I can see why
you
they
know,
would.
and so that's the profiling thing. It's like, you
Yeah.
know, can I just be a
Yeah.
citizen in society?
Yeah, I
Do
mean,
that?
it's tough
Yeah, you
because
can
on the
have
one
one
hand,
house.
profiling is natural to humans, but on the other hand, it is very hurtful when you get it wrong.
Prostitute?
Yes. That means you're good looking. I mean, obviously,
Really?
you look expensive.
Or very, very cheap, one of the two.
It's
I
one
can't
of the
imagine.
extremes, never
Yes.
know.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know how we got onto this far off topic, but okay. Okay, so this is like a chart, how to create a screwed up kid. Okay, so low family income, Unstable employment. Now, not one of these things is guaranteed to screw up your children, but it's like it builds on each other. So unstable employment, having lots of debt, losing your job. This all increases families' economic pressure, creates depression in mom and dad, creates marital conflict. You combine that with an unnurturing or uninvolved parent, and now you've got a screwed up kid, which, by the way, feeds back into the parenting. The worse behaved your child is, the harder it is to be a good parent. So now you've got this self-perpetuating cycle of family destruction. Okay? So if you lose your job, doesn't mean your kid's going to be totally screwed up for life. If you are poor, doesn't mean your children are guaranteed to screw up. But these things pile up onto each other to create a bad situation.
So is that just in like if the household just has another father, or what if it's the multi-generational?
Same thing. The nice thing about a multi-generational family, though, is there's more opportunities for positive relationships. The more isolated you are, the less attachment figures there are for children. So having lots of people around provides more opportunity for your kids to bond with somebody, and that can become a protective mechanism. That's one of the things I don't like about this chart, is it also doesn't show the protective factors that can come into play. So like your child plays a musical instrument, less likely to be screwed up. Your kid goes to church, less likely to be screwed up. Your kid has a relative that is supportive. Your kid goes to a school where there's a lot of school spirit. That's actually shown to be very protective for a child. So there's actually, let me look this up. I think I can probably find it. There's a lot of research that's been done. You can Google this yourself. 40 developmental assets. So there's been tons of research done on these 40 protective factors. So family support, positive family communication, other adult relationships, caring neighborhood, caring school climate, parental involvement in school, a community that values youth. Youth are viewed as resources, service to others, so if your kid volunteers, feeling safe at home, in the neighborhood, at school, clear family boundaries, school boundaries, neighborhood boundaries, adult role models, positive peer influence, high expectations from parents and teachers, being part of creative activities. So your child spends 3 or more hours per week in lessons or practice in music, theater, or other arts. Protects them from juvenile delinquency, addictions, smoking, obesity, being part of religious community. Young person is out with friends with nothing special to do 2 or fewer nights a week. So the more times you just let your kids go out just to hang out, the more detrimental that is to your child. So if your kid is going to spend time with friends at a slumber party, or they're going to the movies together, or don't let your kids go out shopping at the mall. That's just guaranteed to cause problems. But they do at least 1 hour of homework every school day, bonding to school. They read for pleasure 3 or more hours per week as a protective factor. So, I mean, there's 40, some of these are pretty obvious, but like having your kid read or play music or go to church, 1 or more hours per week in religious activities in a religious institution are protective factors. So some of them are obvious, but some of them we would never think would have that much of an impact on your child. Okay. So these are the risk factors. But there are protective factors too. So who influences the family? Now, we often think that parents influence the family. But if you look at a parental effect model, then the parent is affecting the child. But we know that the child does interact. So there are other models that look at how the child influences the parents. So like if you think of my friend who adopted the kid, she has become a much worse parent, I think, because of the way her kids act. It feeds back to her and causes distress, and I mean, she's still married, but they're struggling. So the interactional model looks at how the parent and the child characteristics combine to influence development. So you may think, like if you haven't had kids yet, you may be thinking, this is how I'm going to parent my kids. But I guarantee you once you have kids, the way that kid behaves is going to affect how you end up parenting. So that's the interactional model. The transactional model sees that it's not just that the characteristics combine to influence development, but that they influence each other reciprocally over time. Parent influences child, child influences parent. So that's the transactional model. All right, siblings. So we know for your marriage, your sibling relationship is super important. When you get a new sibling as a child, this can be difficult if you were the oldest. We call this dethronement. You were sitting on the throne of the only child, and now all of a sudden this next brat comes along. Now that is not the case for every family. It really depends on how much parent-child quality time was spent together before the next kid arrives, and then how little time that oldest child is given after the kid arrives. So the more spoiled the child was before and the more ignored they are after, the bigger the dethronement issue becomes. And it can be very devastating and distressing for that child to get a new sibling. However, it can also be handled well, where, like when I was born, I was the second, and when I was brought home, my oldest sister said, "That's my baby," and she hasn't stopped saying it ever since, no matter how old we get. Her baby. Yeah, it's cute until you think about how bossy she is. No, it's so cute. But it did create a lot of fights when we were kids. Like I started walking at, I think I was walking by like 7, 8 months old, something like that. Because she would just drag me outside, and we had like this little push toy, and she'd put my hands on it, and she'd just start walking, and I'm like sliding along, and she'd just hold me there until I started walking. So I was walking really, really young age. She made me. She said she needed me to walk so we could play together. That's what she told my mom. And of course, this is the 80s, so my mom's like, "Fine, take your 2-year-old, my 1-year-old, less than 1-year-old baby outside and torture her." It's the 80s. It's cool. So some older siblings do well. Some have difficulties. Just matters how you handle it. Most end up adjusting well over time. It can lead to long-term sibling rivalry, but most kids are fine.
A little bit of sibling rivalry is good, though.
Little sibling rivalry is good. Too much sibling rivalry is bad. There's always going to be sibling rivalry. I mean, people have issues in any relationship. Doesn't matter what it is. So obviously siblings are being thrown together all the time for many hours a day. There's going to be issues. There can be a temporary decrease in the child's affection and responsiveness to the mother. This is for the oldest child that gets dethroned. So sometimes they get mad at mom for bringing this kid into the house. Usually dad doesn't get blamed. Just mom gets blamed. "You're rebelling. Why didn't you do something about it? My life could have been great." By the way, only children have a lot more emotional issues in life. So the more siblings you have, the lower your chance of divorce. So each sibling decreases the chance of divorce by 10% up to 7 siblings. So if you have 7 siblings, you have a really low chance of divorce. Only children do really bad in marriage. Because of course, if you have 7 siblings, by the time you get to marriage, you're like, "I know how to deal with other people's crap. I've been dealing with it all my life."
Would that be 7 siblings that are living in the house?
Living
when
in the
you're
house,
growing
yeah,
up?
living in the
That's
house.
my 3 stepchildren don't count.
No. Did they all live together?
No, they were all gone by the time.
Okay, so then yeah, you'll have.
But they're
older child.
around a lot.
That helps, but it's children living together of the same relative age. Because older children tend to be much more accommodating towards young children. They'll go out of their way for them. They'll give them extra attention, like as if it was their own kid. Whereas you have siblings of basically the same age, and they're like punching each other over a toy, right? So if you can deal with that successfully, you can deal with marriage.
So that thing
That's why
was not
siblings
in
are
this PowerPoint, the practicing an instrument, reading. for
No,
it.
I just Googled that.
Oh.
So just Google 40 developmental assets. Yeah. If I remember, I'll put that up on Blackboard for you guys. Okay, so yeah, siblings, very important for proper social development. So this sibling rivalry is good for your kids. Don't freak out, because I've heard so many parents say, "I thought when I had kids that they would love each other and get along." Like, what world are you living in? Like my niece and nephew made me watch Trolls with them yesterday. It's a terrible movie. It's like a world of rainbows and cupcakes, right? You've seen that movie. Like that's the world they're living in. Siblings fight. It's just how it is, and it's good for them. Okay. So competition, jealousy, resentment. This is, notice the word, normal. Okay, it is normal. Now it can become excessive, and it can also be annoying to parents. I get that, but it's normal. Yeah, 56 per hour is what one
That's
researcher
not right.
found. Yeah, 56 skirmishes. I like skirmishes. It's a military term. We skirmished. We didn't have a full battle yet. That's coming. We'll see who wins the war. That's what it is. It's like growing up with siblings, right? So yeah, lots and lots of bickering. Now, The Danish, so how do they handle sibling rivalry? They have a fight.
I feel like they just let it go.
They just let it go, okay? That is the number one method for dealing with sibling fighting. Just ignore it. You hear it going on in the background, you just keep like one ear out for when real crying happens and some damage has been done, and then you go and deal with it. But otherwise, you try to let them work it out, which is great because your children are learning how to communicate with each other. If you're always stepping in to solve a problem for them, when are they ever going to learn how to do problem solving? So you need to give them time to deal with it on their own. And one of the other things that they do is when kids come to them and they say, oh, my sister did this, she won't give me the toy or whatever it is, then they'll turn around to them and they'll say, I have confidence in your guys' ability to work things out. Why don't you go try? And you'd be amazed it works. I try that on my niece and nephew all the time, and it works. They're able to do it. The other day, my niece Nora, she comes up to me and, Ryan's acting like he's better than me. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but he had ended up saying, he finally admitted, I called him over and I'm like, what happened? Because your sister's very upset, and she thinks that you said you were better than her. I never said that. Well, yes, he did. He said, I think he said I'm smarter than you. So he did not exactly say I'm better than you, just I'm smarter than you. And so finally, once it comes out, so this is the issue, I decided I'm not going to try to solve it. I'm just going to say, well, your sister, her feelings are very hurt because you said that. So you guys need to work it out because I know you both are smart and you can handle this. And I walked away. And 5 minutes later, they come out of the room and I said, did you guys work it out? And they go, yeah, we worked it out. Great. I don't even want to hear how you worked it out. Just do however you kids need to do it. And so here I can go on with my life and not be bothered by them, and they're working things out on their own, which is so great for their relational communication skills. Okay. One way you can decrease sibling rivalry is get along with your spouse. The better parents get along, the better children get along. Children are a reflection of the distress in their parents' relationship. Okay? Parents who are warm and sensitive to all the children, not one child, all the children, have less sibling rivalry. So one of the biggest triggers for sibling rivalry, besides marital distress, is the singling out of children. Why don't you act like your sister does? She behaves so good at school and you're always getting in trouble. Well, great. Now I'm not as good as her. That's what they think. They don't think, oh, I'm so much more motivated to behave well in school. Of course not. Or sharing, right? So here's one kid playing quietly with the toy. The other kid comes around, tries to snatch it. The other kid won't let him. And now all of a sudden, oh, he won't share his toy. And so what do? Share your toy with your sister. What's wrong with you? Sharing is important. And so what does the kid think? That jerk, she gets to steal my toy whenever she wants to. Now, I do think sharing is important, but I think there has to be a balance between it's not right to also teach your kid that they can come and steal whatever they want and get away with it whenever they want, right? You also don't want to teach that. So there has to be fairness in how you treat the kids, because otherwise you increase the anger between the two children, okay? Having said that, though, don't be too upset about sibling rivalry. It's okay. So siblings give you emotional support, they give caregiving, they teach each other, and they increase social experience, which of course is required for emotional development. This is why siblings are so important. You shouldn't have an only child. You can raise only children well, you need to make sure that they're around other kids. Otherwise, they're missing out on a major part of social development. My mom always said, because whenever my sisters and I would fight, she was like, your siblings are more important than anything else in the world. When you get older, everybody else will be gone, but your sisters will still be there. She always said that. I'm like, I don't care, I still want to punch her. But she's right. Like your siblings are more important than anybody else. Personally, I think when it comes to between picking your spouse and your sibling, that you really, assuming you have even a decent relationship with your siblings, you really have to consider your siblings' feelings in the matter. Marriage is not just between you and another person. It's between your family and the other family. So I think it's much bigger than that, just that. Indirectly, an older competent sibling increases mother's positive psychological functioning. So that oldest child that is depended on is really good for mom's mental health. Decreases her stress level and everything. You do have to be careful not to over-parentify your oldest. How many of you oldest feel like you're given too much responsibility in life? Anybody? Nobody in here? Yeah? Okay. Some people are admitting to it. So on the bright side, you helped your mother feel better. It was good for her. But it may be too much for the oldest child. The other good news is like every president or general we've ever had has been an oldest child. There's never been a middle or a youngest in any of those positions. So you are given great leadership skills. Positive mother's functioning means more supportive parenting, and by you being more competent, oldest children, your younger siblings end up more competent as well.
I
So,
can definitely see that.
Yeah.
That happens in my younger brother. He sees the way that I act. I mean, I'm the middle child, but he sees the way that I
but it
act.
still feeds down, it trickles
Yeah.
down. Yeah, absolutely.
I think I inspire my older siblings too, because I'm the
Yeah.
first generation to go to college.
Oh, nice. Good for you. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, so siblings, super important. I mean, even the teaching, right? As soon as you teach the oldest child, they become the teacher for the younger ones, and so you tend to have, I mean, the smarter the oldest child is, the smarter all the other siblings will be as well. Like my niece and nephew are learning Arabic because they're half Egyptian, so my sister got them an Arabic teacher, and it was so cute because they learned how to write their name in Arabic. So Nora, the older daughter, is teaching the little boy how to write his name in Arabic, and it was adorable. But, yeah. Yep. Well, you know, their dad's Egyptian, so they hear a lot of Arabic when they're with him, but yeah, I don't know why he didn't. A lot of immigrants don't want to teach their children their language because, like, you should be American. You don't need to know this stuff. But so we've secretly got them Arabic lessons. He doesn't know about it, but he's gonna wonder why. Well, all of a sudden you're picking up this Arabic really well. So we'll see. But I
They're
think
gonna be happy when they hear what their Christmas gifts are
right
in Arabic.
yeah, in Arabic, yeah. We'll see. But I'm hoping it makes their relationship better.
Is that-
He's Coptic, Christian, Egyptian,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I was
Coptic
wondering.
Orthodox, yeah. Not Muslim yet.
Oh, Muslim.
Muslim, yeah. In Egypt, it's mostly Coptic, Orthodox, Christian, and Muslim. But he's Coptic, so he's got the cross tattoos. Anybody familiar with Egyptian culture? If you're Christian in Egypt, you get tattooed at 3 years old. So everybody knows you're Christian. And then when you shake hands, you do it like this. If you shake hands with a Muslim, they'll turn your hand,
Wow.
see if you're Christian.
Interesting. Oh, that's the purpose.
Yes, because if you're Christian, I'm not doing business with you. And then you're going to be harassed, maybe jumped.
Get a hit on there just to get the business.
Right. If it was another Christian, yeah, it might get you business. But if it's a Muslim, you're in trouble. Yeah, yeah. My brother-in-law's older brother, he was walking home from church one day in Egypt, and they still live there, and he had a rosary, or not a rosary, I don't know, whatever the Coptic version of it is. It was like a rosary, and it was hanging out of his pocket with a cross, and he got stoned. Luckily, he lived. He was only like 8 when they stoned him. But yeah. And then you have to work on Sundays because they're trying to keep Christians from going to church. It's interesting. So they go to church really early in the morning, and then there will be gangs of men out early in the morning waiting for Christian women to walk by on their own so that they can rape them. Because if you are raped, you have to marry your rapist. And if you marry a Muslim man, now you're just considered Muslim. You're not Christian anymore. That's
Okay, so the
culture.
purpose is just to make them Muslim, not
To
really.
make them Muslim, yeah. Yeah, crazy, isn't it?
That is good.
Glad I live in America. You have to marry your rapist.
Religion is a very, very toxic thing. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
not
there's,
that you
there's,
shouldn't believe. I'm just saying
there's
when you
benefits
get
and
people
there are
into groups
definitely-
like that,
Uh-huh.
you know, it can be
Yeah.
toxic.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That goes in every religion.
What was that?
That goes in every religion.
Yeah, there's just crazy people, period, in this world. But yeah, I mean, religion has been used as a tool for crazy people, for
Yeah.
terrible people forever. Yeah, absolutely. All right, autonomy, independence. So this is the teenage years. It's not that your kid becomes a teenager and all of a sudden they care about independence. Teenager is like when the independence needs to be achieved. So it is a continuum. It's a progressive development of independence over the years. Your 2-year-old wants to be independent. Okay, if you have a kid, you know that that's the case. As soon as the child's first word practically is usually no, right? As soon as they know that word no, man, they're using it all the time to have control. So in the teenage years, this is when independence needs to be, comes to fruition, when they really need to develop their independent identity. And this is the same no matter what culture you're in. So you might expect like a collectivistic culture where there's less emphasis on autonomy that this wouldn't happen in teenage years, or maybe not as much, but it's still happening in the teenage years, okay? Which can cause extra distress if you're in a collectivistic culture because people are trying to decrease your autonomy while you're desperately wanting autonomy. So this is just human nature. This is programmed into our DNA. This is not culturally bound. No culture in history. If you read writings in the past, which there are writings about teenage years, there's still a desire for independence, no matter what culture or time period in history. Now, authoritative parenting, unsurprisingly, is the best for your teenager. So there's certain things that are black and white, and then there's flexibility with the other things. Okay? So this gives teens the opportunity to strengthen independent decision-making skills. That's the best thing about authoritative parenting, because there are some gray areas. Kids can make their own decisions. They can learn the skills to make the decisions. And then sometimes they can make the wrong decisions, and there's lots of great learning that can take place when you've made the wrong decision. So you have to give children choice in life, and the older they get, the more choice they need, so that they can develop these skills, so that by the time they're out of your house, they can make good skills on their own. The authoritarian parent that doesn't allow kids to make choice, by the time they're on their own, they have no idea how to do anything with their life, and they're just a mess. I remember when I went to college, I lived in the dorms, and the kids, some of the other kids there were just, there were some boys who got, what is it? It's not shingles. What is it when you're low in vitamin C? What disease is it? Scurvy. They got scurvy because they didn't know how to cook. So all they did was they bought boxes of top ramen noodles, and that's all they knew how to make. They knew how to cook top ramen in the microwave. And so as girls came over and taught them how to cook, how to use a stove and stovetop, we had to teach them how to use the dishwasher, how to do their laundry. It was insane. They got scurvy. I think there was 10 boys who came down with it. What was that?
Helicopter parents or what?
Helicopter parents. Oh yeah, absolutely. Parents do everything for their children. And then they just say, okay, go out into the world, you'll be fine.
Oh, that's
I took great care of you, you should be okay. That's not how it works. They need to learn how to take care of themselves, how to make their own decisions, how to do things.
We used to teach that in school too.
Yeah, we
cooking
did.
classes,
Home ec,
sewing, all of that. It's all gone. But
Yep.
you know,
Yeah,
I
which is
thought it was a
unfortunate.
great idea to get kids, and even how to find a job, look in the paper. Well, we don't have that anymore. But
Yeah.
look, call someone. Can't do that anymore either because it's all
Yeah.
billing at you. So.
But still, you need to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
Like, there's a student who I was just recently helping with the application to Loma Linda's nursing program, and I was like, this is terrible. Like, how do you expect to get into school? So I had to work with her. I'm like, this is how you fill out an application. You can't just, like, she was listing, like, what did you get honors in? What jobs did you have? And she just, like, 5 words. And no, they give you 2,000 words. Like, they expect you to do some explaining. Like, you have an opportunity to make yourself look good. Oh, I didn't know I could do that. It's
Multiple choice.
right, yeah. So, yeah, we just don't teach kids skills anymore. So, it's crazy. School or parents. So the teenage years are great because basically you need to think of the teenage years as this is the time for my child to practice being adult while I'm still there to give them some guidance. I'm there to sort of be like the buffer between hurting themselves on reality. So I let them do their own thing, but I'm there to keep them from getting into trouble. Now, of course, if you have not worked on getting them to that stage, and then all of a sudden in teenage years you just say, okay, practice being an adult, now of course you're going to have all sorts of issues. So you need to, the younger you start trying to increase your children's independence and their ability to do things for themselves, the better. Like, I remember friends' kids came over and they're like 10 and 12, and they come up to me and go, can we have a glass of water? Can you get us a glass of water? No. You freaking get yourself a glass of water. You can reach the glasses in the sink. Are you kidding? Oh, well, our mom always gets it for us. Your mom's insane. First of all, that's too much work. Like, lazy parenting is actually, it's okay. Like, be a little lazy. It's good for your kids. They need to do things on their own. Like, if you can't even get yourself a glass of water, how are you supposed to have a marriage in 10 years? It's just, yeah. You have to give your kids the skills they need to survive. All right, so speaking of establishing marriage, so 90% of people will choose to marry. 28% of people are not married at any one time, but many of them chose to be married at some point. So 90% of people will get married. In the first year of marriage, we usually have a decline in marital satisfaction. So we were more positive about marriage before we got married than going into it. And that is because we usually have too high of expectations. We just have this sort of like Twilight, like I'm going to marry this vampire and he'll give everything up for me expectation of marriage. And it's another person. And you have a friendship together. That's all marriage is. You shouldn't have higher expectations for your marriage than you would for, you and your best friend. It's just another person. It's not, a romance novel come to life sort of thing. Although if you actually read romance novels, they usually are not perfect and idealistic. But maybe more people need to read those. Couples are most likely to survive when they maintain a high level of positive and supportive interaction. So you have to keep doing things together. Some people, as soon as they get married, man, the dating goes out the window. We're married. We do things together all the time. But doing things together like cleaning your house or raising your children is not positive, supportive interaction. It's like go out to the movies, go to the dinner, go have the grandma babysit, and you guys leave. And so I know so many people, I would never leave my children with another person. Why? Like, how many people do you know are child kidnappers? Like, probably most of your friends are not going to kidnap your kid. It'll be fine. When my mom was in college, she had me and my sisters when she was still at university. And she would drop us off with a friend at the beginning of the day, and at the end of the day, she'd start asking around, has anybody seen my kids? Somebody give them back to me, please. That's how it was. And we were fine. It was great. Like, we never had any problems. So the majority of people probably everybody is a decent person. And certainly your family members should be trusted. Although actually, if your kid's going to be kidnapped, it's usually a family member that's going to do it. You'd be better off giving your kid to a stranger than a family member, statistically. But still, chances are, unless you're divorced, that you don't have to worry about anybody being kidnapped in your family. So, yeah, and friends are fine too. It's okay to let your friends babysit your kids. Because the best thing you could do for your kids is to maintain that good relationship with your spouse. So that you have to give that priority. Plus it's good for other people to learn how to take care of kids. It'll make their marriage better too. All right, new parenthood. By age 40, 80% of women have given birth to a child, and 76% of men have fathered a child.
How was that?
Sperm donors.
Yeah, some of it could be sperm donors. Some of it is men having children with multiple women. Women having multiple baby daddies.
Oh, okay.
Also, women tend to live longer than men, so that would be the opposite. No, so it's just multiple baby daddies and sperm donors. New parenthood is a stressful transition. So when you get married, things are going pretty decent, and then the first spike in divorce rate happens with the first child. Okay, so usually 3 to 7 years into the marriage is when you see the first spike in divorce rates. Okay? 'Cause that's usually, most people have a child within that point. Okay? If you do well, and you don't see that drop in satisfaction or a rise in divorce, then this is parents who had an easy baby. The more babies with disability, sicknesses, more emotional babies, creates more distress, more fatigue, more stress within the relationship, more likely to cause divorce. They possess positive personal qualities and coping skills. They can deal with it. Yes, it's stressful. Having a newborn is stressful, but I have the skills to cope with it. And then they receive reliable support from their partners. So your husband's not around to help you with the kid, they're not at least emotionally supportive, then your marriage is in trouble. And vice versa too. Men also need to be emotionally supportive. Children do have a slightly negative effect on marital satisfaction. Okay, you tend to be less satisfied with your marriage. Men in particular see a drop in marital satisfaction because men like their wives' attention, which I don't think is a bad thing. And some men have a hard time when all of a sudden wife is paying attention to the baby and not paying attention to me anymore, and now I feel ignored. And some men have a hard time coping with that, sort of like dethronement issue with them as well. You know, it's not just the oldest child, it's also the husband sometimes has issues with that. And mom's fine because I've got this cute baby that I'm playing with all the time. I've got plenty of attention from the kid, so I've totally forgotten about my husband. And so he's the one suffering over on his own. And of course, men don't talk about it, right? They don't share. They don't say, honey, I feel so lonely since this baby has arrived, right? That conversation usually doesn't happen, even though it needs to. And if it does happen, a lot of women are pissed off about it. Like, this is not a competition between you and the baby. Why would you even say that? Do you not love the baby? You know, so a lot of times when men try to express their emotions, women aren't sensitively responsive to it. And so men then learn, I'm not doing that again, right? And now your chance of divorce just went up, okay? I deal with this cycle all the time in couples therapy, trust me, it happens a lot. So stress from parenting, it claims energy and attention from the marital relationship. Now the parents who do well, they have a positive outlook towards parenthood. So if you are like a teacher over in biology who's like, kids are just money suckers and I like my Harley, then if you have kids, you're going to be miserable. So he's smart, he did not ever have kids. Okay? But if you think kids are just like a gift from God, they're the best thing, how could you ever have a happy life if you don't have children? They're wonderful. Then once you have kids, your marital satisfaction will probably increase, assuming your spouse also has a similar attitude. And then if you believe that children will help you to be a better person, then your satisfaction will also increase. Okay? So it's really your attitude towards children that determines whether you will be happy when you have kids or not. Nowadays, a lot of people are like, children are sort of like a purse, like they're an extra that I add to my life when everything's going good, and they should just make me happy, like new shoes would make me happy. I mean, it's really that sort of weird attitude towards children in modern society. And the richer, the wealthier society gets, the more often you see that attitude. It's a side effect of a wealthy society. If you're poor and you're like living on a farm or a hunter-gatherer society, then children are like, yes, I've got another hand around here to help work, especially agricultural societies. Little new farmers are great. I live on a farm. I can't wait to have more children in the family. I mean, my sister's kids, I got them trained. They feed. Like last night, I was sick. They fed for me. And I paid them $2 to feed. It's awesome. Don't tell like the employee board for fair income, fair wages. Okay, so then we get through that first issue in marriage, having children. Once you have children, you get used to it. You do pretty good. Then the kids leave, and now you see another spike in divorce. Okay, so around 25 to 30 years of marriage, you see a lot of people getting divorced. And one reason is because there were problems, they were never dealt with, but the kids kept you together. So you have this mindset, I need to stay together for the sake of the kids. Which, there's some truth to that. I mean, divorce is bad for your kids. So assuming that you can get along fairly well, then staying together could be a benefit for the kids. However, springing divorce on them is also a bad thing. I had a friend in college who, she's like, my parents have a perfect marriage, can't wait to get married, I want to be just like them, they get along so well. And a week into being in the dorms, she came in crushed, she's sobbing. My parents are getting a divorce, they just told me. They were waiting for me to go away to college before the divorce. So she just, like, her world was shattered. It was the saddest thing ever. So yeah, ease your children into divorce if that's going to happen. But I don't know why, if you can get along that well for 30 years, like, I don't understand why people just can't get along. It's I don't know. It's weird to me. But I get along with almost everybody, so that's right. So parents react more positively than negatively to children leaving the home. So empty nest syndrome is a thing. People do have distress from all of a sudden your home is, there's no kids here, who am I? A lot of women feel like this is when they hit their midlife crisis. I was a mother, and now I'm not a mother. What do I do with the rest of my life? I'm not that old. I'm 50, 60, maybe even younger, 40, depending on how old you were when you had kids. And all of a sudden, you know, you have to, if you have a stepchildren, it might extend the cycle a little bit longer. I know some women who just have another kid. It's like, you have a 20-year-old, and all of a sudden you have an infant. So then you don't have to deal with it.
She's reading. You are totally reading it.
Am I?
Yes.
Yes. Too much distress, just have another kid, calms everything down. And it works for some people. Some people it doesn't. Some people it does work for. This is when a lot of women also go to college.
You are so reading everything.
Yep.
You have the tea leaves out.
I know, I'm good. Huh? I paid a lot of money for my doctorate. I'm hoping I'm getting things right. That's why you should go to Loma Linda. Okay, that's where I went. It's a good school. So, but on the whole, it's a positive experience. And plus, you get that spare room back. Now you can have the gym you always wanted or the office. I mean, it's awesome. This is when women are most productive in their life once the kids have left home. So productive meaning like financially or contributing to society besides raising children. Obviously that's important. But it's kind of judgmental to say they weren't productive before because they were just raising kids. But yeah, so that's a positive thing. You have fewer roles, fewer responsibilities, less stress, you have more money. You can go travel the world finally. More opportunity to focus on your marriage. So if you can make it through the distress of that point, then you'll probably have the best marriage you've ever had. Okay? So that's why you should just try to hold on. Okay? People just give up too soon. And then oftentimes it boosts your self-esteem because you feel like, yeah, my kid's out of the house, they're on their own, they have a job, they're going to college, I did pretty good. And so this is, remember when we talked about self-esteem rose in the 50s and 60s? This is one of the reasons why, because you feel like you have accomplished something by raising this successful child. Now, of course, in today's economic world, it's hard for kids to get a job, hard for them to support themselves, and this is actually causing an increase in stress in people at this age in their life because their kids aren't successful because they can't freaking get a job. Like I have so many friends I went to graduate school, they have PhDs, and they're working part-time jobs or...
It's a gig economy.
Yeah. I have a friend who lied about her education to get a job because she kept getting turned down for being overqualified. So she finally just put on there that she only had a bachelor's degree and she finally got a job. Crazy, huh? Yeah. Dumbed it down. Yep. Overqualified. Then you get to grandparenthood. Grandparenthood can be awesome. It really depends on the requirements of the life at the time. So there's 3 categories of parents. The remote parents, so they're geographically and emotionally distant. They're just not around. And even if they're physically around, they're not emotionally around the support. Obviously, this is not the grandparent that we want. Companionate is the most common. These are the ones that they frequently see the kids, they do things with them. They're the ones that babysit and give your children ice cream behind your back when you're trying to raise sugar-free children, right? So they're companions to the kid. They're friends with your kids. And then you have the involved grandparents. So this is one that is helping to raise the children. So they help a lot with childcare. I mean, the companion grandparent may babysit, but that's different than helping to raise the child. Okay? Advice, other practical roles in the grandchild's life, maybe taking them to school or watching them while mom works every day, things like that. So oftentimes single mothers will have this style parent. This type of grandparent is more common in minority cultures. Well, I shouldn't just say minority. Any low-income culture is going to be more likely to have the involved grandparent because either maybe parents aren't around or parents are having to work really hard to make ends meet, and so they have to have somebody to help support, and daycare is expensive, right? Unless you're really poor, maybe you get free daycare, but grandparents are much better than daycare. So the less wealthy you are, the more likely you are to have the involved grandparent. Also, some cultures that are more primitive type, like hunter-gatherer type of cultures, because they have more of the multi-generational families, they're also more likely to have an involved grandparent because everybody helps to raise your children. It's just everybody does it. So family effort, yeah. I think if you're good, if you have either of these, you just don't want that remote grandparent, unless your grandparent's annoying. I have a grandmother that nobody likes her. My niece and nephew, they finally met her. They met her one time, and they came out from. I picked them up after they'd spent the day with her, and they called her the Wicked Witch of the East. I was like, wow, I didn't say that to you. Nobody gave me that idea. It's crazy. She used to live in California, and then she moved to the Midwest, and we had a party. Literally, we had a party when she left. This terrible grandma. My other grandma's awesome. I love her.
Ding dong, the witch is good.
Yeah. My other grandma, and this is an interesting thing too, is that they can change what type. So my grandma used to be involved. When my mom was younger, she was going to college, she really needed help. So my grandma, not that she was great with childcare, but she lost us a couple times. My mom said she came home once from school, and she's like, "Where's Serena at?" And my grandma said, "Oh, I just saw her. I just gave her a bath." Well, that was like 2 hours before, and I was wandering down the streets of San Diego naked, 2-year-old, just walking the streets, and she didn't notice I was gone. So I don't know how I survived my childhood. But now that I'm older, my grandma's definitely much more of a companionate type of grandma. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
My grandma used to babysit 12 of us, my grandchildren.
Oh wow, how did you keep track? Somebody would have done it if it was my
She
grandma.
did it.
Yeah.
She didn't keep track, that's it.
Yeah.
Every so often, she'd get one of the oldest to say, "Oh, I go find out if they're
Like where
alive."
people are. Yeah.
And if they said, "Yeah, they're alive," she wouldn't ask what she
Sounds
was
like my
doing.
grandma. Yeah.
And then one time,
I love
mom
my
came home, she's like, "What?" And she's like, "There's someone in the neighborhood. I don't
Yeah.
know.
You're fine. That's
But they're
okay.
alive."
Yeah, that's the important thing, right? Keep your children alive.
And it was, but that was.
Do you love your grandma?
Well, she passed away 4 years ago, but like the last time I was like taking care of her because she had a stroke, and I was just like, wow, this is like if I didn't have that like relationship with my grandma, it would have been really hard.
Yeah, my grandma's awesome. You guys would love her. She's got so many good stories. She once went on a date with a homeless man under a bridge, and they ate a can of beans together, sitting on cardboard boxes. That's the type of person my grandma is. Seriously.
Where did she meet this young man?
She worked in San Bernardino. She worked in San Bernardino as a phlebotomist. She worked at a plasma bank. So you've got a bunch of poor people coming in to donate blood, and yeah. Then he asked her on a date. So
She went?
she went. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Pick
Yeah.
me
My
up
grandma.
under the alley underneath
Yeah.
the bridge.
Yeah. My grandma said, when I was a teenager, I used to file my nails in a point just in case the boys got frisky. It's like wow. My grandma's awesome.
That is
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
Give them a quick little stab. There you go.
Yeah, they'll behave themselves. Yeah, my grandma's hilarious. She once set a forest on fire. Yeah, her friends, they were just little. It was in New Jersey, so lots of forest, and they were playing with matches out in the forest. And she said it was only like an acre burned down before they got it out. But yeah, they set it on fire. So
She's not met Smokey the Bear.
yeah, but I was back in the 30s. You know, people were crazy back then. Okay, so marital relationships. So having sex in marriage. The frequency of sex, how often you have sex, does decrease over time as you get married, or as you are married, as marriage progresses. However, having said that, married couples still have a lot more sex than single people do. Okay, so it is a myth. Hollywood likes to show that married couples hardly ever have sex and you're much better off being a single person sleeping around. It's not the case. I mean, just think the logistics of it, right? If you're single, what do you have to do to get laid?
Didn't go out on a date.
You have to go out on a date, and before you go out on a date, if you're a girl, right, you have to go shopping for clothes, and you have to try on all the clothes in your wardrobe, right? And then you have to do your makeup. You have to spend hours. You have to spend lots of money, which is why men should pay for dinner, because you spent like $150 getting your nails done, investing in makeup and hair stuff, right? So the least they could do is buy you dinner. Right? So then you have to find somebody to go out on a date with, right? How many hours do you spend swiping on Tinder, right, before you get that date? And then you finally go out. You have to determine if the person's a serial killer or not before you sleep with them. You have to get them to want to sleep with you, okay? And then you have to find a place to sleep, right? What do you have to do to have sex if you're married?
Just go home.
Roll over, right? You have to just roll over. You don't even have to brush your teeth. You're like, just don't look at me.
Don't even have to brush your teeth.
Right? So it's a lot easier to have sex if you're married. So married people have much more sex than single people, and they also have better, more satisfying sex than single people. That is what by self-report questionnaires of how satisfied are you with your sex life. Married people are much more satisfied with their sex.
Well, it's because it's the same person that they've been with, so they know.
Yeah, you've got them
they know
trained,
all, yeah,
man.
they know all of your spots.
Exactly. Exactly. They know what you like. So even though the longer you're married, the less often you have sex, that does not mean that you're not having enough sex. Okay? On average, married people do have more sex than single people. Now there's exceptions. Of course, anybody who comes into therapy usually has issues with their sex life. Interestingly, in my experience, it's usually the men who don't want to have sex and the women do. I don't know that is true as an average, but that's been my experience with
Is there
counseling.
an age range where that happens?
No,
Or is that
honestly,
all ages?
all ages. I've seen it at all ages. Yeah, she's always like, he never wants to have sex. She always wants to have sex. Yeah, it's really weird. I never expected that to happen. And I don't know if that is statistically true as an average, but that's just in my experience. So, yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. And it may just be people with problems extreme enough to go into counseling, or it may be the type of personality that's willing to go to counseling. I'm not sure what factor is causing that, but yeah, it's very interesting. Psychological intimacy, on the other hand, increases. So you become more emotionally connected, which is also one reason why sex is more satisfying, because you have the emotional connection as well. And there's not the fear there. Like, if you're a girl having sex with somebody on your first date, there's a lot of fear involved about pregnancy, STDs, how crazy is this person? If I want to stop, will he stop? That, you don't have those fears when you're married to somebody. Well, depending on who you marry, but I think in general, you probably don't have those fears. Yeah. And then happily married couples have more agreeable personalities. Now, this is a cycle. If you have more of an agreeable personality to begin with, you're more likely to be happily married. But being happily married also turns you into a more agreeable person. So over time, you become a nicer person to be around. So that's important. You need to care about how the other person feels in order to have a successful marriage. By the way, before I go on, sex is one of the red flags that therapists will look at. Like, if you're not having sex in your marriage, then that's a bad sign for the state of your marriage. So therapists will often ask about how the sex life is going. Because if you're still having sex, then therapists will be like, okay, there's a lot of hope here. You're not having sex, whew, this is problematic. And one of the reasons is because oxytocin artificially bonds you together. So if you're having consistent sex, then you're having lots of oxytocin produced, and it may be enough of a bond to get you through that hard time and back into a happy state of your marriage. So
It's like a Band-Aid.
it's a Band-Aid, yeah. And Band-Aids can be good if you're bleeding out. Now, sibling relationships, like I said, they're typically the longest lasting, and they become better over time. The older you get, the better. Your relationship with your siblings and your kid was probably pretty crappy. But the older you get, generally the better the relationships become, on average. So they become warmer, they become closer. Into the elderly years, they will become very close. My grandma's living with her sister in Northern California, so she bounces around. So right now she's up in Northern California. So her sister's husband died 3 years ago, but she's still struggling, living on her own. So her sisters rotate moving in with the other sister to help take care of her, which is really nice. Yeah. They just went on a cruise to Mexico together. A few years ago, they went to Israel and they went camel riding. I think my grandma was 75 when she did that. Wow. Yeah. It tells you I love my grandma. She's crazy.
She's really active.
She's really active, yes.
Fall off one of those, it's gonna.
So parent-child relationships. I talked about the sandwich generation. Middle generation squeeze is another term for it. But sandwich generation is the most common term. So this is when you have elderly parents you're taking care of, and you have kids still in your household that you're raising. So this is the most stressful situation to be in. So those most likely to experience that caregiver burden, they care for parents, spouses, or children with behavioral problems. They don't want help, or they feel like they have to help. It's their duty. I have some friends from India, and their dad had Alzheimer's, and the oldest daughter, that was her job. It's nobody else's job, it was just her job. And she's like, I want to get married. She went to medical school, and so she couldn't be a doctor because she had to full-time take care of her dad, and so she experienced a lot of stress because she didn't want to be there. Lacking resources, either for personal coping skills, emotional support, or financial burdens. And then lack of social and cultural support for caregiving. Like if you are from a European American family, then you may not have a lot of support for taking care of your elderly parent. You will probably hear a lot, why don't you just put them in a care facility? And that can be very stressful. It's like, I feel strongly that I should be caring for this person, and I get everybody around me telling me that I'm not doing the right thing. That's difficult. Whereas if everybody around you goes, wow, you're such an amazing person for taking care of your elderly caregiver, you can see how that would make it a lot easier. So don't ever say that to somebody. Or about their child. If they have a disabled child, why don't you just put them in a care facility? It's a horrible thing to say.
I think that'd be the worst thing you could say.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? Actually, while we're on this topic, there's a great video on stress I would like you to watch. And it talks about that. It actually talks about the telomeres and everything in there. So this is about more than just family. It's about stress in general, but it's a great video. It really teaches you a lot about it.
What am I thinking about? Mortgage, debt, money pouring out. I thought, look, I'm no cancer when I feel it. Here she. What is she up to? Never cold, never say a word.
Stress. It is everyone's inferno. Bedeviling our minds, igniting our nights, upending our equilibrium. But it hasn't always